The morning sun had barely risen over the small farming town when Jacob Turner parked his rusty pickup truck outside an abandoned equipment auction. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete, birds nested inside broken machinery, and a handful of local farmers gathered more out of curiosity than interest. Most of the equipment had been sitting untouched for years, eaten away by rust and forgotten by time. Jacob stepped out wearing faded jeans, worn work boots, and an old baseball cap. His 8-year-old son, Noah, climbed out beside him, carrying a lunchbox his grandmother had packed before sunrise. "Dad," Noah asked quietly, "are we really buying tractors that don't even work?" Jacob smiled. "We're buying possibilities." Since losing his wife 3 years earlier, life had become a constant battle. Jacob worked construction during the day, repaired engines at night, and somehow still found time to raise Noah alone. Every dollar mattered. Every decision carried weight. Most people believed he was barely surviving. What they didn't know was that every paycheck he earned had been funding a dream no one else could see. Inside the auction yard stood 6 rusted tractors lined up like forgotten relics from another era. Their paint had faded long ago. Tires were cracked. Engines hadn't started in years. Even the auctioneer joked that they'd probably be worth more as scrap metal. Laughter echoed through the crowd. "Who's crazy enough to buy those? They'll spend more fixing them than buying new ones. I wouldn't let my cows stand near them." Jacob quietly studied each machine. He wasn't looking at the rust. He was looking at the frames, the transmissions, and the engine blocks. Years before becoming a construction worker, Jacob had spent nearly a decade rebuilding heavy agricultural equipment with his father. While others saw junk, he saw machines that still had strong bones. The auction began. One by one, newer tractors sold quickly. Finally, the 6 rusted machines rolled onto the bidding list. Silence. Nobody wanted them. The auctioneer sighed. "Any offers?" Jacob slowly raised his hand. "I'll take all 6. The crowd burst into laughter. Someone shouted, "Planning to start a tractor museum." Another added, "You'd be better off buying lottery tickets." Jacob ignored every comment. His winning bid emptied nearly every dollar in his savings account. As the tractors were loaded onto trailers, several farmers shook their heads. Poor guy's finally lost it. Single parenting must have broken him. Noah climbed into the pickup. "Dad, what if they are right?" Jacob looked at his son before starting the engine. "People laugh when they only see today." "What do you see?" Jacob looked toward the distant hills beyond town. "I see 5 years from now." That evening, while most neighbors relaxed after dinner, lights glowed inside Jacob's old barn. One tractor stood in the center. Its engine lay in hundreds of carefully organized pieces across the floor. Noah handed his father tools while asking endless questions. "How do you know where everything goes?" Jacob smiled. "Every machine tells a story. You just have to listen." Night after night became week after week. Jacob worked construction until sunset. Then he returned home, cooked dinner, helped Noah with homework, and spent hours rebuilding engines until well past midnight. His hands developed fresh cuts almost daily. Grease stained every shirt he owned. Neighbors drove past and laughed whenever they saw lights burning inside the barn after midnight. They assumed he was wasting time. What they couldn't see was that Jacob wasn't simply repairing tractors. He was redesigning them. Using salvaged parts, modern hydraulic systems, fuel-efficient engines, and custom-built components, he transformed outdated 3 years past, and the abandoned land that people once mocked became the busiest farm in the county. What had started with 6 rusted tractors and a father determined not to quit had grown into a thriving agricultural business unlike anything the community had ever seen. The old tractors, once dismissed as worthless scrap, had become symbols of Jacob Miller's determination. Instead of repairing them into ordinary machines, Jacob rebuilt each one for a specialized purpose. One handled precision planting, another hauled irrigation equipment, a third was modified for harvesting smaller fields, while the remaining tractors became reliable workhorses for daily operations. Their faded paint remained untouched in places as a reminder of where everything had begun. Noah, now 13, had grown alongside the farm. He knew every field by name, every irrigation line, and every piece of equipment. More importantly, he understood why his father never threw anything away without first asking whether it could be repaired, improved, or transformed into something useful. One summer morning, a convoy of luxury SUVs rolled onto the property. Employees exchanged curious looks. The visitors introduced themselves as executives from one of the country's largest food distributors. Satellite images had caught their attention. They had noticed that Jacob's once abandoned fields consistently produced healthier crops than neighboring farms, even during seasons of drought. They wanted answers. Jacob didn't give them a polished presentation. Instead, he invited them into one of the fields. He scooped a handful of rich, dark soil into his hand. "This," he said, "is my real investment." Over the previous years, Jacob had focused on rebuilding the land itself rather than chasing quick profits. He planted cover crops, restored natural nutrients, rotated planting schedules, reduced chemical dependence, and designed an efficient water management system using recycled materials. The executives spent the entire day touring the property. By evening, they weren't discussing tractors anymore. They were discussing partnerships. Weeks later, Jacob signed a long-term supply agreement worth tens of millions of dollars. The deal guaranteed purchases of his crops for years while providing funding to expand operations. News spread quickly. The same neighbors who had laughed at the auction now drove past the farm simply to see what everyone was talking about. Some admitted they had underestimated him. Others stayed silent, embarrassed by the jokes they had once made. Jacob never reminded them. He simply kept working. As the business expanded, he refused to forget where he had started. Instead of buying expensive new headquarters, he renovated an old red barn into a modern operations center. Instead of replacing every old machine, he repaired whatever could still serve a purpose. Instead of hiring only experienced workers, he gave opportunities to people who had struggled to find employment: single parents, military veterans, young mechanics, and local teenagers eager to learn skilled trades. His philosophy was simple. If someone believes in your potential when nobody else does, you never forget it. Within 5 years, the company managed thousands of acres through partnerships with struggling family farmers. Jacob offered something unusual. Rather than buying their land outright, he helped them improve production